I'm like a lightning rod because I'm attacking New York's finest. They're self-proclaimed king of New York. You know what I mean?
Did you feel at any point that you was like betraying New York or Biggie by going to do that interview with Tupac at that time?
His side of the story was like, how could I be mad at a whole coast? That don't even make sense.
And I think Puff is probably one of the only persons that heard that interview. Angie can't say that nobody heard that interview, because it wasn't her ideal not to put it out.
Tupac hit us with Hit 'Em Up, and that joint was cold.
Plus, Puffy trying to see me weak, hearts I rip, Biggie Smalls and Junior Mafia some more.
We would take your turntables, you played Hit 'Em Up. That thing hurt to this day.
So this old interview with Tupac just resurfaced, and it's making waves on social media because it sounds like Pac was really trying to warn us about everything that's now going on with Diddy. At this point, it's clear to everyone that Diddy wasn't just running a label, he was running a whole crime operation behind the scenes, and Tupac was one of the first to publicly talk about it. Remember that infamous Angie Martinez interview that she claimed she didn't want to release in full because of the whole East Coast, West Coast beef? Well, turns out Angie lied. It was never her decision to block that interview from coming out, it was Diddy's. But now with the federal trial underway and people finally feeling safe enough to speak out, it's becoming obvious that Tupac was telling the truth. He saw something early on. How did he move the people he kept around? The fear, the silence, and tried to call it out. The crazy part is Tupac was saying all of this back in the 90s and nobody wanted to listen. People were calling him paranoid or claiming he was just jealous of the New York scene, but we know that Tupac was simply ahead of his time. He saw what the rest of the crowd missed or just wasn't ready to admit. So what exactly did Tupac say about Diddy in this interview, and is this the reason his life was cut short? Let's get into it. Every time
it benefits New York, he represents New York. When it don't benefit New York, now he's just another rapper. But y'all let him wear y'all.
So as you all know by now, there have been rumors for years that Diddy had something to do with Tupac's death. It's one of those things that's always been in the background, rumor stories from insider stuff that never quite disappear, and a lot of people believe it all started with Diddy feeling threatened by Tupac, not just musically but personally. See, Pac had that raw presence, charisma, talent, real street credibility, and obviously Diddy couldn't compete with that. He had money and power, yeah, but Pac had the people.
I'm trying to find my way in the world, you know, I'm trying to be somebody instead of just make money off everybody. You know what I'm saying? And so I go down paths that haven't been traveled before, and I usually mess up. But I learn, you know what I'm saying? I come back stronger. You know, I'm not talking ignorant, you know what I'm saying? So I obviously put thought into what I do.
See, Tupac was everything that he wished he could be: smart, talented, good-looking, funny, stylish. Pac had that natural star power. He didn't have to force it, and most importantly, Tupac actually cared about his people and community. Unlike Diddy, he wasn't out here constantly plotting and scheming how to use or play everyone around him.
I was like, yo, Pac, so like, how much would you charge me to do an ad? And he sits down and he gets really quiet. It felt like he stayed quiet for an hour. And I'm thinking to myself, damn, I shouldn't have asked him. Then he looks at me and says, yo, I ain't gonna charge you for nothing. He says, you black, I don't charge my people for nothing. It was just the way he was. He just wanted to support the business. He knew what we were faced against. He knew how competitive the fashion industry was.
He was very intentional to make sure that I was seen. And I think bigger than everything, it's the fact that I see you and I want the world to see you. He said it was important because I was a black designer.
Meanwhile, Diddy was out here trying way too hard. People who knew him growing up said he's always been mad, insecure, and it showed. He wanted to be that guy, but he just didn't have that thing. He couldn't rap, couldn't act, had zero swag, and he most certainly didn't have the look. Since the 90s, folks in the industry have said Diddy was always a try-hard, cowardly, attention-hungry, and obsessed with being feared and respected.
And that's not even to take away from him, but I know he's a weirdo. You know what I mean? Like, we've been hearing some stories about him, that he been doing some weird things and moving weird, and he always been, you know what I mean, always been a snake type of dude. So it's not surprising that when you hear all types of crazy stuff coming out now, you know what I mean? We always heard that he was, you know, moving in a strange way. And it wasn't surprising when we did hear like he was part of this and he put the hit out on Pac, or he paid for it. It wasn't surprising for us, because you gotta understand, like, he always been a very fidgety person. Like, you know, like a scary, nervous individual. Scary people with money do some scary things. You understand? Because he never was a person that was built to confront stuff on his own.
And honestly, with all this stuff coming out now, Diddy's looking more and more like a straight-up psychopath, someone who would do whatever it took to get to the top, use people, betray them, ruin their lives, and never feel a thing about it. He forced his way into being that guy, but let's be real, he never had that natural vibe Tupac had. Pac didn't have to fake it. Did he always look like the hardest?
I'm the hardest hustler in the world. This is Savage Part 2. Don't tell me about it's 2022 and I'm still a savage. Whatever I want, I get. Whatever I want, I get.
And according to Diddy's ex-bodyguard Gene Deal, that's exactly why Diddy couldn't handle seeing Tupac blow up. People naturally gravitated to Pac, while Diddy had to pay people to be around him. So what did Diddy do? He straight up started copying Pac, the style, the clothes, even the kind of women he went after. It was giving obsessed.
Everybody knew that Puff took Tupac blueprint and changed Biggs and Bad Boy in image. I Get Around talked about how fly you was, how many girls you mess with, how many cars you drive, how much money you got, what you willing to do. He took his image. Pac was the first one on the scene wearing Versace shirts. He went and got the same Versace shirts Pac had. Which, all right, some dudes would do that. You would never catch me wearing something else, something that somebody else got. He was knocking down all the women that he thought Pac was knocking down. But Puff had an obsession with him for whatever reason it was, because he started wanting to act. He started wanting to rap. He had an obsession so bad that at his Grammy Award winning speech, he used the same speech that Pac used.
And there's even talk that Diddy got so jealous of Pac that he allegedly started getting aggressive with Kim Porter after finding out that she had a thing for Pac.
And where Puff idolized some of the things that he was doing. So, whatever they may have done, and you gotta remember, they was all swingers. It came to the point where him and Pac wasn't cool no more at all. And maybe Kim liked him, Pac, more than he liked Puff. But she couldn't have Pac.
But Tupac figured Diddy out early, like way before everyone else caught on. He was actually one of the first in the industry to start talking about how Diddy might have been on the DL, but it wasn't just that. According to Suge Knight, Tupac was also really concerned about Diddy's alleged creepy behavior around young artists, and now with all these stories coming out about Diddy and people like Justin Bieber, it's looking like Pac was ahead of his time on this too. There's even this interview where Suge Knight said Tupac wanted to call out certain rappers and producers who had secret boyfriends, not out of hate, but because he thought some of them were using their power in shady ways and could end up hurting young people.
If it was a rapper that messed with guys and go both ways, Pac didn't feel that was good. Because Pac felt he was real serious about the music. So if you're a producer or you rap, and regardless if you're married or not, and you got a boyfriend that works for you, a real boyfriend who used to be a dancer, Pac would studied all the facts. Pac was real smart. So before he say something, he'd go and do his homework. He'd say, okay, this guy right here, they say he gay, he go both ways. I'm not gonna put it out there on him yet, but I'm gonna do my research, and if it's true, the world should know. Because this guy might be around one of those little kids one day and mess around with them, and so I'm gonna do it to actually save him from a little child. That's why Pac attacked certain rappers and said they gay.
Now Suge didn't say names outright, but from what he said it's pretty clear he was talking about Diddy. He mentioned a producer with a boyfriend who used to be a dancer, and that could mean he was talking about Andre Harrell, the late Uptown Records founder, who some say had a special relationship with Diddy. And speaking of dancing, Diddy actually started out as a dancer himself, and back in the day Suge used to tease him for dancing in Bad Boys music videos.
First of all, I'd like to thank God. Second of all, I'd like to thank my whole entire Defo family on both sides, you know what I'm saying? Like to tell Tupac, keep his guards up. We ride with him. And one other thing I'd like to say, any artist out there want to be an artist and want to stay a star, don't want to have to worry about the executive producer trying to be all in the video, all on the record, dancing. Come to Death Row.
So with all this new buzz about Diddy's possible link to Tupac's death, fans are saying the coincidences are getting way too crazy to ignore, but we also have to bring up that infamous Angie Martinez interview because Angie always claimed she didn't release the interview in full because she didn't want to make the East Coast-West Coast beef even worse back then, but Gene Deal recently confirmed that the real reason the full interview never dropped is because Diddy himself blocked it.
When Angie Martinez, right, when she went to LA and did the interview with Tupac, did y'all know about that on Bad Boy side?
Yeah, we heard about it. And I think Puff is probably one of the only persons that heard that interview. Angie can't say that nobody heard that interview, because it wasn't her ideal not to put it out. Do you understand what I'm saying? She can say that it wasn't her idea, but it's not owned by her. Who owns that interview? Because who was sent out there? Hot 97 owns it. Do you understand what I'm saying? So she could take all the accolades for not putting it out. You understand? But when you send somebody or someone of your person do an interview under the banner of Hot 97, it belongs to Hot 97. And Puff in the back ran Hot 97. That's how he got Wendy Williams fired. You understand what I'm saying? He can make phone calls to say something, to say, don't put this out, don't do this, take this off. He had that kind of power.
So Puffy, he did hear that Tupac interview.
Why would you try to stop something if you ain't heard it?
So Angie only ended up putting out about 10 minutes of what was actually a 2-hour interview, and from what insiders say, Tupac had a lot to say about Diddy in that full version.
And what's going down with that? So I wanted to get his view, and here goes a little something.
The East Coast, West Coast thing is a musical thing. That's separate. That's a whole thing separate to itself. That's a musical thing. Where we have been beefing about whose music is better or which is this or which is that
like it's gotten
from
real
the beginning.
bad
It has
right now.
because I'm like a lightning rod because I'm attacking New York's finest. They're self-proclaimed king of New York. You know what I mean? I'm attacking them so because nobody is separating themselves from them. They still
talking about
how
Biggie?
raw, yes, they still talking about how raw he is and woo, woo, woo. He's a representative. He represents New York.
There are a lot
every time it benefits New York, he represents New York. When it don't benefit New York, now he's just another rapper.
I'm not
But y'all let him wear y'all colors. You let him shout y'all shit out. When Biggie came out here, he screamed out, "Brooklyn's in the house." We don't beat and say, "Why you starting a war?" Why is everybody, when I say West Side, it hurt people's feelings?
I don't think it's because you're saying West Side. I think because,
They think they own me.
Nah, not at all. I think it's because, Dog Pound video came out, New York, and I'm not saying you was in the video. I know you wasn't in the video.
I wasn't in it. I didn't write it. I didn't produce the beat.
All right, so let's
I
take
was in
that.
jail. The album was done while I was in jail. That's separate.
It just, you know what it is? It's New York's visualizing your camp, which to them is Death Row, which is Dog Pound, which is Snoop, and which is that whole thing. And it was all one time. The New York video came out. Brothers was stepping on cars in New York, stepping on, on New York like they owned it. Boom, you come out next video, West Coast.
What about the video? Yes, it is. To me, it is the best coast, and everybody in New York feel like that too. That's why they come out here and party, man. Why is everybody acting like? I'm not saying. I didn't say for me to say Cali is the West Coast. I never said New York ain't shit. I never said New York is the worst coast. I just said where I'm at, where I'm from, is the best coast. Why is that offending people?
This all went down during the peak of the East Coast-West Coast beef, so people were hyped for what Tupac was going to say, but Angie claimed that dropping the whole thing back then would have just made things way worse, and she didn't want to cause any more drama or vice.
That's where I interviewed him.
That's
where
it
happened. It was in the middle of like all that. It was smack in the middle of like what was going on, crazy, and I was 22 and maybe if that. It was like my first big interview, and I flew to the West Coast by myself.
Wow.
Didn't know him from nowhere. And I really just went there and interviewed him. And what I got was so crazy that at the time, I couldn't air it on the radio because I was literally afraid that somebody would die. I literally thought I would make a bad situation worse. When my intent was to try to smooth it out and make it better, but he was so angry and passionate at the time that I really felt like if I would have came, put it on the radio, it would have got worse. So what I did is I have this 2-hour interview, right?
Yeah.
What I did was I aired 5 or 10 minutes of it, the best pieces
Yeah.
that I felt like wouldn't cause more problems, and that's all I ever aired. So technically, I have this 2-hour Tupac interview that's never been ever heard,
and that's going to be offered on your site, Throwback Thursdays. You got to put the whole interview.
Yeah, no, I'm at the place. Everybody's like pressuring me to do it.
You have to put the entire interview.
I feel like now, I do feel like now it might be a better time because I feel like everything's settled. It's part of history. I feel like almost selfish because it's so amazing. I feel selfish that I have kept it to myself.
But now we know Angie basically had no choice but to keep that interview locked down. Going against Diddy's wishes back then could have gotten her fired, or maybe even worse, so that interview has been surrounded by rumors for years. But here's what people say. Tupac allegedly said Pac called out Diddy by name throughout the interview, saying he was behind a lot of the drama, the setups, and the threats since he got at Quad Studios in '94. Tupac also allegedly claimed that Diddy had ties to street fans and might have even helped set him up, or at least let it happen. And if that had aired back then, it would have been huge, especially with the East Coast West Coast beef already so tense. But here's where it gets really serious. Tupac also reportedly exposed how Diddy really ran things at Bad Boy, not like the regular record labels but more like a mafia, and he allegedly said there were even bigger, more powerful people than Diddy pulling the strings, stirring up division in the black community, pushing gangster rap and all that negativity to destroy the community from within and then profit from their trauma.
Same people who own the labels own the prisons. Literally the same people? Literally the same people who own the labels own private prisons. The records that come out are really geared to push people towards that prison industry.
But they didn't make you write those lyrics.
It's not about making somebody write the lyrics. It's about being there as guardrails to make sure certain songs make it through and certain songs don't. Some records are made by committee, meaning record company guys sit around and tell the artists, this is hot, say that, do this. We're gonna have this guy write the lyrics. We're gonna have that. You have, the record company pushing the narrative. Some social engineering going on here to make sure those prisons stay full.
So Pac supposedly accused these higher-ups of controlling everything from the shadows and using guys like Diddy as puppets to tear the community apart, and some sources even say he named names of these top players.
And I've always had total love and support and understanding that after my second marriage failed, because I had been 100% heterosexual up until that point, that I opened myself up after the failure of my second marriage. Having read something about bisexuality, my story was different. I just found that I would open myself up to the possibility of a relationship based on the person and not on gender. And I did after seeing a man or a woman for about a 4 or 5 year period of time. Interregnum, entered into a relationship with a man.
Interview 15. And if this is true, it might be why, even with Diddy now finally facing consequences and his bad boy empire crumbling, that full interview still hasn't seen the light of day. Because if Tupac really outed the real power players at the top, it makes sense they'd keep it locked down forever. But now I want to know why you think Diddy blocked that interview. Was Tupac just exposing Diddy's shady moves, or did the orders come from way above with the real puppet masters afraid that Pac would blow the whole thing wide open? Drop your thoughts below and don't miss this next video.